Hello beautiful creative friends, it's Belinda and I'm so happy to be back with you today to share a new process video. Over the weekend my parents celebrated their 45th wedding anniversary, so I thought this would be a nice time to share this video where I am documenting a photo that I took of them on their 40th wedding anniversary. I'm using some Pinkfresh Studio products for this and I'm just showing you what I've prepared already. I used their Rosette stencil and die set along with some of the dye products that they released in May. I will leave the details down below of what those product names are, but there's a fringing dye. And then there was also this really cute bow detail die as well, and I'm planning on using all of those on my layout. And the collection that I'm using, I believe, is called Flower Market. Again, I'll leave the details of that down in the description box below. So I loved this patterned paper, and having those two border colors, I knew that I wanted to use that on the background of my page. So I'm just trimming down my white cardstock. I'm measuring how deep that pink border goes into that green patterned paper, and I'm making sure that I'm trimming down my white cardstock so that when I place it over the top, it is going to fit nicely. And it didn't then, but I switched the camera off and I fixed it up. I've adhered it down and then taken it over to my sewing machine and added a row of stitching around the border. And I just love that it's giving the effect of a double mat, but it's just using the one piece of patterned paper. And of course I have cut the center out from that piece of patterned paper because I don't want to waste any of this gorgeous Pinkfresh paper. So as I said, I've got this photo of my parents on their 40th wedding anniversary from a few years ago now, 5 years ago now. And I'm going to create just a simple mat behind the photo. So I've chosen a few different patterns from the 6x6 paper pad that came with the collection, and I'm matting the photo down onto those. Now, when I created the rosettes, I used colors that coordinated with the papers from the collection, but in fact, I don't actually end up using all of those rosettes, and you'll see that when it comes time to embellish it a little bit later on. With these fringe strips, I wanted to use them as a really subtle detail in one of the layering elements that I'm going to use for embellishing this layout. So I've just grabbed some plain white cardstock and I cut out about 6 of these fringe trim pieces, and I'm going to layer them up on top of each other. And I think I leave about, let me see, it's either 1/4 of an inch or a 1/2 inch. I think it's 1/4 of an inch space between each of the fringe pieces. So I'm going to use just a thin line of glue to adhere those down and then pop it off to the side to allow it time to dry. And you can see I've got them there now. It's quite dense with the fringing, but what I want to do is to grab some of these chipboard frames and adhere those down on top of the fringing, and then I will come back later on once they're good and dry and I will trim them out. So like I said, it's a really subtle detail. It is mostly white, but that fringing just adds another layer of texture to these little frames that will form part of my embellishment clusters. Now, going back to talking about those rosettes, when I saw this Pinkfresh Studio rosette stencil and die set, I absolutely knew that I had to have it because I have always loved the look of rosettes on my projects, but they add so much bulk and so much dimension to layouts, and I really am trying now to minimize the amount of bulk that goes onto each of my layouts because scrapbooking albums are really quite expensive to purchase here in Australia. I don't have a huge amount of space for storage, so I want to make sure that when I am putting my layouts into albums, I am getting as many in as I possibly can, and I can't do that if things are bulky. So those rosette stencil and dies, they really do look quite realistic, but they have no dimension. It is just a flat piece of paper. So for me, that was just brilliant, absolutely perfect, and I love them. So I used the die that you can see just off to the top right there to cut some glitter cardstock. And the effect of this die is almost like having some twine running across the page. And then the little bow, it's really super fine. It's a super, super fine bow. Such a sweet little detail. And then when I stick that down over the top, it gives the effect of some twine with a bow tied around it. So I wanted to add something a little more, another layer, another bit of texture onto the background. So I grabbed a stencil. I marked out the center of where my photo is going to be, or where I wanted my photo to go. And then I've just used some light modeling paste to stencil a background. So it is very subtle. You can see it quite obviously now because there's nothing covering it up. But once I have got everything in place, it is going to be just a really sweet, subtle element to add a little bit more to the background, because the design of this is going to be quite simple, but what I'm going for is lots of layers, lots of really subtle layers to keep this really visually interesting. Now, because I have got mixed media on the background there, I did use some wet adhesive behind. I added some foam because I did want to give that photo a little bit of dimension. So I've added not just some tape, but also some wet adhesive to the back of that foam. And then when you add the adhesive, it will sort of get in between all the layers of mixed media, and it just means that that photo has got a better chance of staying in place long term than it would have if I had just used some tape. Likewise with the title, these are the puffy stickers or puffy alpha stickers that came in the collection. I'm just adding a little bit of wet adhesive behind each of them. My favorite glue that I'm using here is the Art Institute glitter glue. I've got a couple of bottles, one which has got the thicker nozzle for when I want more adhesive, and then I have got the fine tip on the smaller bottle here. So just adding a little bit of glue behind each of those letters before I stick them down, and then using the glue again for my journaling strips. So this is absolutely my favorite way to add journaling to my layouts. I have an old typewriter, it's a vintage typewriter, and I use that to type out my journaling, cut it down into strips, and then adhere it nice and straight on the layout underneath the photo. So now the fun part, comes time to do some embellishing. So as I said, I created those rosettes in a few different colors that coordinated with the collection, but I'm actually only going to use the yellow rosettes for this particular layout. So I've got yellow rosettes. I have chosen some of the frames in the orange color, and there's one there which has got some orange and yellow. And I'm going to create 3 clusters around my photo, and the rosette and the frame is really going to create the base of each cluster. So I'm trying to vary the placement. On some, I'm going to have the rosette behind the frame. On another one, I've got the rosette in front of the frame. So again, just varying things up, but repeating elements gives the layout some cohesiveness, but also still keeps it visually interesting. Now, in this collection, in the ephemera pack, there are some vellum ephemera pieces, and again, I love the subtle detail that they give. That transparent piece, it's different to using some regular floral ephemera, and it's quite soft, and I really love how that adds to each of my little clusters on this layout. There's also a little vellum piece that I am sticking up the top there that says, "This makes me smile." Now, if you have worked with vellum before, you'll know that it can be very tricky to adhere down because most adhesives show through from underneath the vellum. So to get around that, I'm just grabbing my tiny stapler. I think I have got some gold staples in there, and I'm just going to staple that piece down onto the photo in between the lines of text, and that is a really perfect way to adhere that nice and solidly, and also adds another element to that little cluster there. So as you can see, I'm using my wet adhesive to adhere each of these little pieces down. I tucked them into place first, got them into a position that I was happy with, and then I've gone back and added the adhesive underneath, and now I'm coming in and tucking in those little vellum floral pieces around each of the clusters to add, just a nice pretty little floral touch to it. And then I am grabbing a couple of sentiment pieces that I had pulled out that I thought would go well with this layout. I've got this little strip here that says "So Special." It's in a green, and I'm adding some foam to the outside of it because it is sitting on the half sitting on the photo and half sitting off the photo, and because the photo is mounted on some foam, I need foam on the outside just to make sure that that piece doesn't fall flat or bend in the middle once it's put away in an album. I've also got this circle chipboard piece here that says "Amour," which means love. Perfect for this layout. I'm also going to add some little twine pieces. So I've added those off camera because it's not my forte, but I have sort of ruffled up some of that gold thread. It's just some sewing machine thread, and tucked that in behind. I think I put it in behind all of the clusters, all 3 clusters. And then to finish off, of course, I have some Nuvo drops in a translucent yellow and a translucent green. And once I've put those drops on, that will be it. So I do have some close-up photos coming in just a moment. I do hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have, I would love for you to leave me a comment or give me a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel, I would love for you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you can join me on all of my upcoming paper crafting adventures. I will leave it there and say thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.